appreciate the invitation to be here and to be part of today and to talk to you all a little bit about my career path. I've been lucky enough to have really 3 careers. I had a law enforcement career, I'm in a teaching career, and I'm in a horse breeding career. So I'm a farmer too right now. And I'm older than most of you people here. I think I probably retired from the U.S. Marshal Service before some of you were born. And I'm still going, and I intend on having another career if I get it in my head to do that. So first I'm going to talk about some successful strategies that worked for me, and then maybe a little bit of the difficulty that I experienced when I was beginning my career, and end with my work in the Marshal Service and talk a little bit about teaching. So when I was driving here, I was thinking about you all. You all are the present, and you're the future. I'm a little bit of the past, maybe here to encourage the future. And I was trying to decide how to compare my time on the job to each of you. For instance, chasing a fugitive before the time of GPS. We had a map book that was about 6 inches thick, chasing crooks in LA and San Diego. How would I do that now? I can't get home without my GPS. So how in the world could there be anything remotely related to then and now? Many systems in the offices weren't even automated when I started. Now, fingerprints have been automated for 20, 30 years. Now everything's AI. I have to watch my students about turning in papers that are done by AI. Then I realized people are people, and that's one of the things I realized in my career. Regardless of where we are or where we've been in this law enforcement career, there are similarities. We all want to serve. We've all written that check to donate our life, to help others. We've written that blank check. Whether we think it every day or not, it's there. So let me talk a little bit about some bumps. Regardless of our time in history, as professional women, there's probably been some bumps in the road, or there will be. You know, maybe you're one of the fortunate ones who never have experienced a bump yet. But they're out there. The skills that served me well in my law enforcement career way back then will work for you now to handle these bumps. And there's kind of 3 strategies that helped me. Use the stepping stones or the boulders. When a bump or a boulder's thrown at you, turn it into a stepping stone. This means be willing to take the less desirable things, whether it's less desirable duties. Did I want to work the cell block and hand prisoners toilet paper when I got in the Marshal Service? No, I immediately wanted to go on the fugitive investigative strike team, but it took me a while to get there. I just wanted to catch fugitives. Training classes, when they offer you motor vehicle school, is that what you want? No, I wanted firearms school, threat assessment school. I wanted the cool, sexy things. Then you go on special assignments. Baby deputies were sent on Con Air. 5 of us are in the air with 138 federal prisoners, dropping them off, picking them up, going across the country, sometimes going down to Cuba, sometimes going to Turkey. Not a fun assignment, not a fun assignment. You're on this plane with all these stinky prisoners and they're all wanting this or that, but it's what young deputy U.S. Marshals do. So I shut my mouth and I did it. There are things you eventually want, but number 2 is choose your battles. Choose your battles. You cannot address every issue that you don't like. I mean, although I've got a big mouth and I wanted to jump on everything I didn't like, but you can't. Now, the 3rd thing that really will help you, reward. Reward your coworkers by being good to work with. Reward your bosses by getting the job done. There's nothing better than having people who work with you and for you that'll get it done. You know, if I needed something in New York, I knew who to call on that would get it done. That's all. Just do your job. It's not hard. If you're a supervisor, give your employees rewards. Give them tangible things. If your agency has the money, give them cash awards. If you're short on money that quarter, give them time off awards. Give them a good office. Give them a decent car. I didn't even get a car when I first started in the Marshal Service because the guys got the cars. I didn't get a car. You know what I did? I kept my mouth shut, but I bitched all the way home. Then one of the days I got a car, and it was an old ratty Capri, but boy, it could run. But I took it, and I drove it. Give respect to everyone you work with. You don't have to be their best friend, their drinking buddy, the person they go slack off, that wants you to go slack off. You don't have to do that. But be good to your team, whether they're above you or below you. And always take the high road. You'll feel better about it. They may not like it right then, but they'll know it's right in the long run. Do the right thing. Thinking about the years of my career, especially the early ones, I realized that a great deal of the stress on my job came not from the fugitives that I pursued or the judges that I protected. It came from myself. We put so much stress on ourselves. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. The stress will come from yourself or even in large part from others who carry the badge. Do not compete against each other. You might want to compete with each other. We're on the same team. The end result is the same. You take care of each other, and it'll take care of you. Don't put so much stress from inside your head. You can wake up stressed and go to bed stressed. Nothing happened in between those 6 or 7 hours of sleep you got to do away with that stress. My advice to handle that stress is be confident in yourself. You've got to be confident. Train. Get that knowledge. Knowledge is power. You need to know how to do every job in your office. Don't pigeonhole yourself. When you become a boss, you better know how to do every single task that's done in your territory, because you might have to fill in. Be confident in yourself. Knowledge. And train, train, train. Just because it's the weekend, it doesn't mean you're not supposed to train. Try to train. Among all the other things we have to do as women. Train. You can do it. Women are circular thinkers. You can do it all. We've already proven that, right? There's other things you need to worry about too, and it's sort of unwritten nuances that are in the job. You know the rules and regulations, but maybe you weren't trained for those nuances of how to deal with everyone. We had a guy in my office who was super good at getting me to do his work. And for some reason, I just couldn't say no. He would ask me, could you do this, could you do that? And I'd say, oh, sure, I'll do it. And then I would, have to run like crazy to get his job done and my job done. We're women, so we're sort of trained to help everyone. We're sort of trained to say yes. Do any of you feel that? Are you learning that no word? You need to try to learn to take care of your task before you take care of someone else's task, if that makes sense. You have to know when to pick your battles. Here's another battle that I had. My first chief deputy called me a pink deputy. Did that not make me want to chew nails? I was a pink U.S. Marshal. The boys were blue U.S. Marshals. He wouldn't let me take the AR-15 home to practice with it because I wanted to get proficient in firearms. I wanted to chew nails. And I could visualize my hands going around his throat, but did I do that? No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't. There's a time to know when to choose your battles. Okay, the early years of my career path start with the 4th grade. My 4th grade class took a tour to the Johnson City, Tennessee Police Department. Garland Music was the officer who toured our little class, and he told us about local, state, and federal law enforcement. I decided right then I was going to be a U.S. Marshal, and I was going to be federal, and I was going to have a good retirement and have a great career, and that's because of Garland Music. I went home and told my parents, and they said, okay, but I thought you wanted to be a teacher. And then they said, why don't you go out and ride your pony? Think about it. So time marches on, and then we got the early 70s. Science Hill High School. the great English teacher, Doris White, listened to me talk about my goals, and she encouraged me again and again. She said, "You can do it." And I said, "Well, I don't think they're going to hire me. I just don't think I can get a job." And she said, "You can do it." And what she did was taught me to write. You cannot get anywhere if you are unable to write, she said. Police reports are legal documents, she said. They would be on file somewhere forever. Now, I don't think any of my reports have made it to the Library of Congress, but they're out there somewhere, and I learned to write. And that skill took me places I really didn't imagine. In the Marshal Service, I wrote operational plans, threat assessments, training manuals, counterterrorism proposals. And the hardest thing was financial proposals to be ripped apart by the Senate committee. But I knew how to write, and we got our stuff. Personnel actions. We all write. We all don't like it, but we write. 1972, I graduated from high school, started East Tennessee State University, Department of Criminal Justice. Fantastic teachers. They'd been there and done the job. I wanted to be that way. So I said, I'm on my way. They told me the field was opening up to women. I believed them. I stayed the course. Well, it was opening up to women, but maybe not in Johnson City, Tennessee. Not yet. There were 3 women in our criminal justice program, and one was headed to the military, one was bound for probation and parole, and then there was me. And I wanted Johnson City Police Department. I'd had relatives there. Other family was mathematicians and engineers. That wasn't for me. I knew I was going to be a cop. So I wanted law enforcement. Now that was my first feeling of sort of being a minority within a minority, because all of us in law enforcement are a minority, and then women in law enforcement are even more of a minority, right? So it's a different feeling. So then I had my classroom years, and I did an internship at Johnson City Police Department. They treated me great. They let me go out and buy drugs. They let me ride along on scary things, bank robberies, this and that. But guess what I had to wear? I had to wear the meter-maid outfit. I said, where do I go get my uniform? You know, where's my intern uniform? Well, this is what you're going to wear. I kept my mouth shut, but I didn't want to. But I did. So anyway, I finished the internship and I graduated. Then I went to Johnson City Police Department to pick up my application. I went to the window, a lady named Kathy that I'd known during my internship, and she said, "I'm sorry, honey, we can't give applications to women." I said, "What? You know, but you let me work for free here for this internship. What's the difference?" She said, "I can't give you an application, Jill." So there was no talk about my qualifications, only that I was the wrong gender. And I said, "But I was that gender when I did my internship." Well, that's different. So I was just like, are you kidding me? So I went home, talked to my parents, and I said, I'm going to Houston, Texas, or I'm going to New York City to become a cop. So whether it was to keep me closer to home or totally support me, they secured the service of an attorney in Johnson City named Stanley Yarbrough. And he and a guy named Jim Bowman sort of gave me some good advice. Big Stanley took my case. It was filed in 1976 with the EEOC based on gender discrimination. And so the process started. In addition to my goal of getting a job for me, I wanted the rules changed at the police department to include smaller statured people. They said I needed to be 5'8", weigh 165 pounds. But the real story is they had a lot of guys there who didn't meet those criteria. And neither were they physically fit. So anyway, I was just ready to chew nails. I couldn't take it. So the powers that be wanted me to get real tall all of a sudden. So while the EEOC was doing their job, I was still trying to find a job. And during this time period, a family friend of ours who worked for Tennessee Valley Authority told my family about their public safety service. It was a police department. They were cops, firefighters. They trained in Murfreesboro. They were emergency medical technicians or paramedics. And their job was to protect the people and the facilities and the land in the 7-state TVA region. And they were federal. Do you see where my mind was going? This was a stepping stone to become a United States Marshal. Do you see where I'm going with this? I was turning my boulder with Johnson City Police Department into a stepping stone. Employment here with TVA would be a great job. I'd get firefighter training. It was a blast going down there and jumping off those buildings all the time, going into real fires. Fantastic training at their academy in firearms. And it started my federal clock toward rank and retirement. It started my pay grade clock. So thank you to that man, Louis Hamley, who told my parents and I about the TVA Public Safety Service. I went for it and I was offered the job. That same week, the lawsuit was settled with Johnson City. This had taken a year, and I was offered the job there. Well, seeing my entry into the federal system just within my grasp, I didn't go to work for Johnson City. I took my year's pay, that they'd retroactive pay they had to give me, my attorney fees they had to cover, and I just wanted them to keep the agreement that they would change the rules to ensure that they would hire small statured people, change those hiring regulations. So it didn't just benefit me, it benefited those to come. So I was in TVA for 8 years. They gave me great training, and they gave me the subsequent duty to train others, and I loved it. But then I had my eye on those lateral transfers with the U.S. Marshals. 2 lateral transfers came open, and I was on it. I applied, and I was hired. I checked all the boxes because I was already in the federal system. I had the work experience because they wanted you to have at least 3 years work experience back then. And I was hired for a duty station in Texas. Yes, Texas. Tennessee girl going to Texas. I said yes. Is that exactly what I wanted? Not really, but it was a little bolder. What did I say about taking the less desirable assignments? Take them, because they're not that bad. They work out to be not so bad. The Marshal Service knew I was hoping for closer to home because I had called them so many times. Do you have an opening in Tennessee? You know, they knew my name in personnel. I don't know if they said it in vain every Monday morning or what, but the opening was in Texas and I took it. So the Marshal Service has a lot of responsibilities, just like TVA, and I like that variety. Arresting fugitives, that's the cool part. Running protection details on members of the federal judiciary. Protecting the Supreme Court justices. That's where I made 2 good friends, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sandra Day O'Connor. Justice O'Connor told me she didn't even realize when she got out of law school that she wasn't going to be able to get a job as a lawyer. They told her they'd hire her as a paralegal or a secretary. And look where she ended up. You can all end up like that. So, the Marshal Service is a great job. And back to those boulders, or stepping stones. I was thrown a few boulders after I transferred into the Judicial Protection Division. And there we run protection details on federal judges who are threatened. I was assigned to Kevin Duffy, who Osama bin Laden wanted to kill, because Judge Duffy had been the terrorism trial for the first bombing attempt. He was the trial judge. So I was assigned to run his detail, and it all went great. I mean, he was great to work for. And then he called me in the office and he said, well, my wife and I are going to Europe, and we're going to visit relatives, and we're going to 7 countries, and we're going to make some speeches. So what are you people going to do for me? And we had never had an international judicial protection detail. And I said, well, I'm sure we'll take care of it. And I left that office, and I was on the phone so fast to headquarters, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, I assumed that a more senior person than me would run this detail overseas. And you know what the word assume gets you? So guess who got to write the model for international protection details? So I did. And it went well, and we all lived to fight another day. A few years later, I was assigned to be the inspector in charge of the Zacarias Moussaoui terrorism trial. He was the only terrorist who lived after 9/11 attack because he was too stupid to get with his team and get on his plane. He was supposed to be on the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, but he had gotten picked up by customs, and he was in jail. So anyway, I got the call from the director to run that trial. I said, don't you want Jim or Terry, these were people who were senior to me, to do that? And he said, nope, we need you to do it. I said, okay, but I'm breaking out into a sweat about that time. So for 2.5 years, I lived in the Alexandria, Virginia Hilton Hotel. And I prepped and ran the trial. And it ended with Zacharias Moussaoui being sentenced to the rest of his life in Supermax detention in Colorado. So stepping stones. These are stepping stones. I talked to the director of the Marshal Service daily. I met weekly with the director of the FBI National Capital Beltway Region Chief. I gave briefings at a moment's notice to the United States Attorney Generals. I had to speak to the Solicitor General of the United States. And these were usually unscheduled meetings. Like once I got a call that said the AG's coming over to see the trial. I said, okay, what day? And they said the motorcade just left. It's on the way. And I said, oh, okay, and we made it work, but I do have gray hair and I do color it. So things that we normally would take days to prepare became routine. And that's the way you do in your job. I'm sure you go in the morning and you think you have a kind of a clear calendar. It's not going to happen. We're in law enforcement, and you handle it. You're a trooper. So now, I'm teaching, and I hope my parents know this because they're not here anymore. But just to finish, to sum it up, I want to say, again, 3 things. Roadblocks, boulders. You can turn them into opportunities, and that's what you better do. It could be an opportunity you never dreamed you would have. Someone. We all have those several someones who help us and helped us get where we are. They guided us. If Mr. Hamley hadn't told me about the Tennessee Valley Authority Public Safety Service, I wouldn't know about it. All I knew is TVA had a couple of dams near me where we would go fishing. So I want you all now to be that someone. Be that someone for others. You don't know how much it means. Stay the course. That's my 3rd piece of advice. We all matter. You all matter a lot. You're the present and the future. You're doing great work, and you make a huge difference. You're the future. Stay the course. So thank you, and let me know if I can be of any assistance to any of you all.